We may have some controversial takes in this one, but I feel like it needs to be said, so. Hi everyone, welcome. If you're new here, my name is Akila, and I am a 200-hour registered yoga teacher. And I often will upload classes here, but I also do some commentary videos, which is what we're going to do today. So we're going to talk a little bit about the problems that I have with yoga teacher trainings and why I think the yoga industry definitely could use a few improvements in their systems and the way they run things that could really benefit teachers and practitioners as well. So today I'm going to be talking about two types of teacher trainings predominantly. I'm going to be talking about 200-hour and 500-hour. These ones are going to be just your general teacher trainings where you cover all bases kind of thing. And you can always go on to do more specialized work later down the line. You can do certifications in like prenatal, for example. But today we're just going to be focusing on the overview teacher trainings, like your 200 and 500-hour. Of course, the 500-hour is going to be a little bit more in-depth, and those ones are also a little bit pricier, which leads me into my first point, which is the price of yoga teacher trainings. Most 200-hour yoga teacher trainings are going to range anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000, and that is if you do them locally. So they would cost a little bit more if you choose to do them abroad, and there's definitely a lot of people that prefer to do these teacher trainings abroad. They prefer to have a fully immersive experience and really get in tune with the environment and are able to really focus on the study and get to know the people around them and connect with that community. So a lot of people will opt for the more expensive ones that are offered abroad, more like a yoga retreat environment. Now I know there's a lot of studios that are working to combat the price of yoga teacher trainings and make them more accessible to people. There's a lot of studios that will do payment plans or scholarship programs in order to give opportunities that aspiring teachers who may be really talented or enthusiastic about teaching wouldn't be able to take the training otherwise without financial help. And I think that's all really, really good steps moving forward. I know there's also a lot of teacher trainings like the ones that I did. The one that I did was roughly $400, and that studio is really working to make yoga teacher trainings more accessible to people because they feel as though everyone should be able to take a yoga teacher training if they have the passion, which I really, really agree with. So the price is definitely something that I feel like could be improved. So you may think it's a little bit expensive to do a 200-hour yoga teacher training course for $2,000 to $3,000, but considering the price it is to run a yoga studio and pay for the upkeep of the facilities, the rent, paying your teachers, for studios that offer hot classes, the heating bill is going to be massive. So it is a really large expense to run a yoga studio, and the teacher trainings are a big bulk of how they are able to keep the lights on. But this leads me into the next problem that I have with yoga teacher trainings, and that is that these 200-hour teacher training courses are not necessarily being marketed to the best candidates for becoming a yoga teacher. A lot of times these courses are being marketed to anyone that comes into the studio, because if you were only going to market your teacher trainings to the practitioners you felt were deep enough in their practice that 200 hours would be enough time to get them prepared to teach, then you'd be marketing to a very small pool of people. And of course, with these big ticket items, and that being the bulk of the profit for a yoga studio, they want to keep this pool of people churning at a relatively high rate. So what I hear a lot from these studios when they're marketing their teacher training programs is they say things like, you don't have to be a teacher after you take your 200-hour, but it's an excellent way to deepen your practice. And so they're telling people that come into the studio, oh, you don't have to have any passion or desire to teach, but you can take this course and it's a really good way to deepen your practice. Do you know what another great way to deepen your practice is? Go to class, go to workshops, form bonds with your teachers, and spend time at the studio. As a practitioner, you can really deepen your practice through time and consistency just doing that. You don't need to pay a lot of money to have this immersive experience, because the reality is that if you take a 200-hour training course, it seems like it would be a lot of time, but it's really not enough time to cultivate the amount of knowledge that you need to be prepared to teach people. And a lot of people that go through their 200-hour and then go straight into teaching are practitioners who have been on the mat for years prior to taking their teacher training. And they've done countless classes, workshops, they've studied under different teachers, they've maybe gone on retreats. These are people that have spent years dedicated to deepening their practice already before they take their 200-hour training. And I'm not saying that if you feel called to do one of these programs and you're more of a beginner practitioner, there's no problem with that. If you want to do it, it's your money, it's your time, absolutely. You should do it if you feel called to do it. But the problem that this is creating is that people are able to take this 200-hour course with very little knowledge going into it of the yoga practice, and they come out on the other side with a certification. And they may or may not be prepared to teach people. And this particularly becomes a problem in the digital age, where anybody who has enough money can take a yoga teacher training that's 200 hours, and they can then market themselves as a certified yoga teacher. But if they haven't done the groundwork before taking their training, then 200 hours is really not a lot of time to be prepared enough to teach. Because to be a good yoga teacher is going to require a really solid understanding of anatomy, a really solid understanding of yoga philosophies, as well as really great communication skills and the ability to talk people through movement, which is a skill that takes a lot of development. So the issue then becomes you have a giant range of abilities in your graduates from a 200-hour teacher training. You have students who have maybe dedicated a decade or more of their life to their practice and to the study of yoga, who then have an additional 200 hours of knowledge, in contrast to students who maybe have only taken a few classes before taking this immersive program. So the range of quality of teacher that you're going to get coming out of a 200-hour training program is going to be very vast. And the issue that this creates is that now studios are often requiring that you have a 500-hour teacher training just in order to apply, because there are so many of these 200-hour teachers that really don't have a solid foundation to teach, and they're not really ready yet, which makes it really challenging for people who maybe are prepared to teach, but they can't afford to do a 500-hour teacher training. And then again, the cycle continues. You may have somebody who can afford to take a 500-hour teacher training, but they may not be as prepared to teach as somebody who has dedicated many years on their mat and many years of self-study, self-practice, going to workshops and classes and taking under different teachers and improving their knowledge of the practice. And just because somebody else has the money to do it, they may be able to meet the prerequisites for a job. So I think the combination of the cost of yoga teacher trainings and also just the way we market them, the client that we are trying to market to, the combination of those two things is creating issues for teachers who are now having trouble finding jobs because they're all prerequisite of 500 hours and a lot of people can't afford that. And this is largely why you're seeing so many teachers gravitate away from studio settings and more into teaching independently, because there's no prerequisite. The other thing to consider is that all teacher trainings are going to have some aspect of self-study, which in yogic philosophy we call svadhyaya. So this self-study is often your at-home practice, your personal practice. So depending on the yoga teacher training, they will have a different number of hours required of this. But when you're looking at a 200-hour teacher training program, not all of those hours are going to be education hours. Some of those hours are going to be your self-study, which is when you get on the mat and do a practice. When you take a class, that would count as self-study. And also, there's no system in place for some teacher trainings on how to track that. It's just you log it yourself and you submit it. So there's really nobody that's able to confirm whether or not you've actually done those hours of self-study or if you just wrote it on your log and submitted it. And I would argue that anybody that is really serious about being a yoga teacher shouldn't have to be told in their yoga teaching curriculum that they should be doing their own personal practice. Anybody that's wanting to be a yoga teacher should be on their mat consistently and be working to improve their craft so that they can translate it to other people. That shouldn't be a part of the course, in my opinion. I do think that it should be a requirement to be a teacher, but anybody who is passionate and wants to be a teacher and really wants to do this as a profession shouldn't have to be told to get on their mat and to investigate for themselves and do their work on their svadhyaya, their self-study. So I think it's really important that we continue to scrutinize these systems, because the reality is that cost should not be a barrier for someone who is really passionate about teaching yoga and really has the want and desire to be a teacher and to share the yoga practice with others. Because when I took my 200-hour teacher training, I was really shocked to discover how little time it really was. When I finished my teacher training, I thought to myself, if I didn't have the knowledge going into this that I did, if I didn't have a degree in dance performance where we studied anatomy in depth, if I didn't have 12 years of experience on my mat, if I hadn't attended lots of workshops, if I hadn't worked with multiple teachers, if I hadn't had all those years of diving into the practice, I would have left that 200-hour feeling so lost and so unprepared to be in a room of people and guiding them through movement and through meditation. And I feel like even after a 500-hour, you could feel the same. If we're marketing these courses to people that are coming in with not a strong foundation of the practice, then we're setting people up to fail. We're setting people up to graduate, and then if they do want to teach, they feel this imposter syndrome in comparison to teachers who did have the foundation of knowledge going into the 200-hour. We have this massive discrepancy between our graduates from 200 and 500-hour teacher trainings. We have some people that are incredibly prepared to teach, and then other people that are only just starting out in their practice. And the purpose of this video is not at all to shame anyone who's taken their 200-hour, regardless of what their intention through taking it was. And it's not meant to shame new teachers that need a little bit more time to marinate, that need a little bit more practice with communicating movement to people. It's just to say that there is a problem with these systems, and the fact that money is the priority over educating teachers and creating a pool of really intelligent, well-equipped teachers. This is the problem, is that we're marketing to people that are not ideal candidates to be teachers. Just because somebody isn't an ideal candidate to be a teacher doesn't mean they can't get joy and community out of the yoga practice. It doesn't mean that they can't deepen their practice. I just think that the teacher training is not the correct environment for newer practitioners to deepen their practice, because that leads to all these other problems for yoga teachers, and it sets up that student to feel as though they're not prepared to teach. I think we should be creating environments where people graduate from these programs and they feel really empowered and they feel prepared to take on the role of a teacher. And I think that there are other ways that we can encourage newer practitioners to deepen their practice, because I think that is such an important thing for them to immerse themselves in the yoga community and to really dive deeply into the introspection and the philosophy and all of the elements of the yoga practice that benefit people and are able to bring them joy in their lives. And as a closing point, I just wanted to say, if we were to do this with any other field, people would say that they thought we were ridiculous. For example, if you started playing tennis for fun and you were really enjoying playing tennis and you had so much fun doing it and you loved it, you loved the club you went to, and you wanted to really dive deeper into it, the coaches wouldn't say, yeah, you should become a coach. You should start teaching other people how to do this. It's a really good way to improve your tennis skills, is to start teaching other people how to do it. We would say that's crazy. We would say 200 hours is not enough time to go from a tennis player that does it for fun to a tennis coach that teaches other people. There are people that train their whole lives and they go to the Olympics for tennis. And there are people who have been playing tennis since they were children. In any other field, to say that 200 hours is enough time to become an expert in something or be prepared to pass along that knowledge to other people, that's crazy talk. So I don't know why we do it in the yoga community. I don't know why we think that going from your first couple times on the mat to taking a course that's 200 hours long and not even if you can include the aspect of self-study, that you're not in an educational setting, you're in a self-study setting, that's not enough time to take on this responsibility. I understand that we are trying to have this inclusivity and we're trying to make sure that everybody feels welcome in yoga spaces and everyone feels like they can be a part of the community. But I don't think there would be anything wrong with putting a prerequisite on these courses. For example, saying that you have to have at least a year under your belt of practice before you can apply to take a teacher training. And I do think that it should be an application process. I don't think it should be just because you have the money to take this course that you should be able to take it. I think that studios should implement an application process to see if you are a good candidate to eventually progress on to become a teacher. And the reason I say this is because you end these courses with a certification, and that is an immense responsibility to hold, that you are certified to pass this lineage on to other people. So I think that in any other educational setting, there are application processes for universities. They require that you apply, that you prove your competence and readiness to take a course that you're going to take. So I think that in this setting, it should be a similar process. And I think that maybe if we focused a little bit more on the ability of the students entering into teacher trainings rather than how much profit we can make from them, then it would really improve the system and improve the pool of teachers that we're putting out into the world. So that is my 2 cents. There are a lot of really exceptional teachers in this world. There is so much knowledge to be found through taking with those teachers and diving into the practice. There's so many resources online. And if you're interested in taking your teacher training, I think that you should, but I do think that you should really try to deepen your practice on your own before relying on a teacher training to deepen your practice for you. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it gave you some food for thought on the way that the yoga industry is structured right now. If you have any thoughts of your own, please leave them in the comments. If you have a yoga teacher training that you took that you thought was exceptional and really gave you a good framework, a good foundation for teaching, please leave that in the comments as well. I think it would be a great resource for people to hear which teacher trainings have done a really good job of creating their curriculum and really making teachers ready to go out into the world and teach. And I will see you in the next video.